We got some great news out of Photokina today, and that's that the GH5 is finally official, or at least officially announced, unveiled, a kind of a soft launch, a little tease as what's yet to come, because the GH5 doesn't have the full official specs released, just a little bit, a little sprinkling of confirming the rumors that were already kind of circling around. I've talked about it on this channel before. We had some rumors floating around, but a lot of those are actually coming true. Come next year, early to mid 2017 is the expected launch date for the GH5 when it finally is released. Now, I'm sure there'll be more announcements, news down the road once we get the full list, but for now, what we know for sure, confirmed by Panasonic, so this is not rumor, this is not speculation, 100% confirmed by Panasonic, is that there will be 10-bit 422 internal recording on the GH5, which is incredible considering I don't know any DSLR hybrid mirrorless type camera, a camera traditionally meant for photography that does that, aside from the newly announced Panasonic cameras that are now starting to incorporate this. So I think this is a trend we're going to see moving forward, kind of a higher quality, better color sampling codec in these consumer cheap camera bodies, which is great. Now, the thing about the GH5 that has been announced is that the 4K 60 frames per second mode, high frame rate 4K, which again, not very common on these cheap consumer cameras, that mode specifically will only have 8-bit 422 color, which 422 color in an 8-bit codec, okay, great, the 10-bit's nicer, but I'll accept it because it's pushing the industry forward. It's a great competitive advantage to have over everyone else who's still sticking with 8-bit 420. So high-end 4K 60 frames a second on the GH5 will be 8-bit 422, and everything else like 4K 30 and 1080 60, and I think there's 1080 120 coming. All of those will have the 10-bit 422 option, which is awesome. Love that. Now, what else have they said? Well, there's been no mention of in-body image stabilization. And a lot of people are worried about this because a lot of the other Panasonic cameras that are coming out under the Lumix brand are all featuring in-body 5-axis image stabilization, but they haven't mentioned it on the GH5, and people are concerned that maybe it's not going to be a feature. I don't know where I land. It would be great to have. It's kind of weird if their highest of the high-end consumer Lumix camera, the GH5, kind of their flagship camera, doesn't have it and all the lower models do. But maybe there's a technical reason for that. I'm not really sure. But in any case, the thing that's hopeful thing to look forward to is that this isn't the full announcement. So they want to kind of save some goodies for later, I would imagine. If I was working over at Panasonic, I wouldn't want to let the whole cat out of the bag. Just let these, few rumors, confirm the rumors that are out there, but don't let it all go. Because what they're kind of doing is they're kind of tipping their hand to any of the competition, like Sony. The GH4 and the A7S and the A7S Mark II now are kind of pitted against each other in the realm of DSLR hybrid mirrorless shooters. And, a lot of people who are looking at one might be considering the other. And for Panasonic to get out there and say, here's what's coming on the GH5, it gives Sony that little wink, and maybe they could include something like that on the A7S Mark III or the A7 Mark III, whatever the case might be. So it's maybe a little risky getting out ahead of it, but hopefully it comes soon enough to where Panasonic still has that competitive advantage, because they deserve it. They've been doing amazing stuff with these GH cameras, and they've been pushing video, unlike Canon, who throws it in there as like a side feature but still tries to protect their high-end line. Panasonic is doing a fantastic job offering pro features in consumer bodies when it's reasonable. And these are reasonable features. 10-bit 422, it can be done to SD cards. I have a Blackmagic Video Assist 4K. It does 10-bit 422 to SD cards. So it can be done, and it's great that it is being done on the GH5. Now, there's not much else to say aside from the still foggy, still vague, ambiguous 6K photo mode. So basically what Panasonic is saying is that you'll have the ability to grab 18 megapixel still frames in a 6K photo stream. So 30 frames a second, you can pull an image out of there and save that as your JPEG or whatever. Well, that's great, but if you're doing 6K 30 for photos, can't you maintain that and just do it as video as well? And it doesn't seem to be the case that it is going to be a video feature, even though the 4K photo mode on the GH4 is tied very closely to the video features of that camera. So there's still a lot that's unknown about this 6K photo mode. We'll see if it's just a little marketing gimmick saying, oh, you can take 6K photos or whatever, or if it's actually something that's video related. Only time will tell, because they've been very ambiguous about it. Other than that, though, they haven't really mentioned much else, and there's a lot of other rumors floating around there, like what's it actually going to be. There's a little bit of a redesign in the body. They showed off a model of the GH5. It looks a little bit different from the GH4. But aside from that, not a whole lot. So I do have hope for the in-body image stabilization down the road at some point because, like I said, they want to reveal a little bit more eventually, and hopefully that information does come later. But I am so glad that they confirmed that it's got 10-bit 422 internal because that's something we've desperately needed on hybrid shooting cameras for a long time. And I'm glad that Panasonic is finally the one to push things forward because I don't know how you can get around that now. You know, from the competition standpoint, if other companies aren't going to offer that same benefit, that same little checkbox on their spec sheet, you know, it's hard for the other things to stand out. And plus the 4K, you know, 60 frames a second is fantastic. High frame rate 4K, love it. Obviously want more of it. And I do have hope that the GH5 won't suffer from any of the overheating issues that have plagued Sony's cameras because the GH4 has been rock solid. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but the GH4 has never failed on me once. I've never had a write error, and it's never overheated and like shut off or given me any kind of heat warning. So if any company can do it, you know, doing 4K 60 in a consumer body, I think Panasonic is probably the one to do it well. Now, fingers crossed, I don't know. Once I get my hands on this camera, once it finally starts shipping next year, could be a totally different story. They could totally mess it all up. Who knows? But we'll see once it comes around.